So this is not a top 10 of things that I dislike about my car. Those things have been done quite a few times on YouTube already. I don't really want to rehash the same stuff that people have already said. We all hate the interior, and the engine's the best part. That's the whole list. But what I wanted to do was go over some things about the car that I don't like personally, things that I want to address in the short term, the things that bother me about the car and need to be fixed over time. Starting out, it's way back in the IRS. If you remember back in my first video I did on this car after I got it, I went over everything about this car that it had for mods. I mentioned that it had an FTBR full tilt boogie racing bushing kit in the car. When the exhaust was put on the car and the car was up in the air on the lift, I noticed that the bushings didn't look like FTBR bushings. I got the car home later on, put it up in the air at home on jack stands, took a bunch of close-up pictures that I'll link in the video too, and I sent those off to FTBR and I asked them what they thought, and they said to me that it looked like they were OEM bushings. They couldn't be sure, but it's what it looked like. Regardless of that, whether they are OEM or a set of their bushings, there are not any grease fittings drilled into the control arms, which means even if they are the FTBR bushings, they've never been greased, which means they're trashed anyway, because this car was raced at Sebring. Which leaves me with the issue of I still have either trash FTBR bushings or OEM bushings. So that's something that needs to be done next year. That's high on the list, to drop the IRS out, get those replaced with the proper bushings that I want in the car. And while it's out, I noticed that the differential cover, it doesn't leak, but it weeps a little bit of oil. It's a little bit wet on the top or on the bottom. I can't remember which side. But that's something that needs to be addressed. So when the IRS is out of the car, I am going to have the Ford Racing diff cover put on. Not only for the added benefit of the horsepower, it will handle a lot more horsepower than the OEM cover, but because the stock cover is leaking, not leaking, but weeping a little bit of oil, so I want to address that issue. And I'll get the grease fittings drilled into the control arms so I don't have any issues with the bushings going out over time. The other issue that I have, this is the side that's not as bad. Actually, in my next video, I go over rolling the fenders on this. It's rubbing my Toyos pretty bad. This is my bad side over here. You probably can't see much detail. It's really bright out in this parking lot. But I get into more detail in the next video that I have coming out. It is rubbing on the tires, the fender, so the fenders need to be rolled. I do attempt to roll them in the video, but you'll have to see how it all comes out. It doesn't come out exactly like I want it to, but you'll see that in the next video. So that's another issue that needs to be addressed over time. If we go to the inside of the car, this was a Southern Florida car. If you notice the seat belt buckles, they are definitely faded, and the back ones are too. They almost look pink instead of red. This car did sit out in the sun a good amount of the time when it was in Florida. This is a quick edit that I wanted to throw in. You couldn't see the seat belts very well because it was so bright when I filmed this in the parking lot. But you can see now how faded these actually are. They look very pink. I just wanted you guys to be able to see that a little bit better. And one other thing that I replaced on this is the dome light fixture was not working. I just replaced that before editing this clip in. So I wanted to show you guys that. It didn't work very long after I got it before it went, and it wasn't the bulb, the fixture itself was broken. If you look at this right here, this is the one that came out of it, and I replaced that with an actual Ford part too. This little clasp on the top here, it's supposed to go around the end of the bulb and hold it in. and that completely snapped off. And some reason these lights would not turn on either. So I figured there was something wrong inside of it, so I just bought a whole new piece, and it's an actual Ford part. And one thing that I forgot to mention during the part in the parking lot when I filmed this is if you look at this trunk lid, I'm trying to show you spots in the paint. There's one right here. You can see how it's distorted a little bit on the video. It catches it every once in a while, you can see that. And it's like that all through this deck lid. It's really hard to see, so I hope it comes out on camera. And the very corner, like right along through here, you can see it right there as the window reflects off it. There's a distortion in the paint. I believe that's in the clear coat. This car was repainted on this deck lid, and the front end was repainted. Like I said earlier, this was a Florida car, and I spent time in Texas as well, so I got a lot of sun. So parts of this car have been repainted. So I'm going to try and buff this out next spring. I want to get this deck lid so it doesn't have, it's like someone stuck their fingerprints in the clear coat. It's really weird. And there's like several spots all through here that are like that. So if that does not buff out next spring when I go to detail this car and give it a paint correction, long-term goal is to repaint the entire car the factory torch red color. It doesn't have 100% factory paint on it now anyway, so I have no problem sanding the thing right down to wherever it needs to be sanded down to and put on a whole fresh new coat of paint on it. But that's long ways down the road, but I just wanted to point that out and edit this back into the video, so now back to real time when I was recording the first part. If we move up to the front, this is something that someone mentioned in one of my very first videos I did on the car when I went over all the mods on it. My bleeder screw on my Brembo 2000 Cobra brakes is on the bottom. This bleeder screw is supposed to be on the top. That means my calipers are on the wrong side. So in the winter months I plan on, it's going to be pretty much be on jack stands for a little while. It's going to be up for the winter anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I'm taking the calipers off, and while they're off, I'm not sure of the mileage and age of those 2000 Cobra Brembos. I know they've been used pretty hard when this was a road racing car. So instead of just taking them off and flipping them around and putting them back on, I'm going to get a whole rebuild kit, seals and everything for those brake calipers, completely rebuild the caliper. And while I have it off, I'm going to send them off to be powder coated, because I want them to match the rest of the car. So when these go back on, they'll be red, they'll be fully rebuilt with new hardware, and they'll just look a lot better than they do now. The black ones don't look bad, but I just kind of wanted to pop a little bit more, have a little bit more contrast with the wheel, and I think it will match the red on the car really well. Another issue is the front headlights are not Ford OEM lights. They are cracked and they leak. When I say they leak, I mean anytime that I wash the car, water and condensation gets up in here, it gets all fogged up, and you can tell on this one here, it doesn't sit flush with the body. It's separated. There's a big gap right here. You know, this is a Ford Cobra Mustang. They're not known for their fit and finish anyway. There's panel gaps and body gaps and all that stuff too, but this headlight should sit more flush than that. This one over on this side fits the way that it should, right up against the body line, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And I want to get these smoked headlights. They are a lot more expensive, especially when you're going with the Ford OEM ones. I think they're like $500, but those will just look so good with this color scheme, because I want to keep the black and red theme going with this. It has the blacked out badges on it, it has the black chrome FR500s, and I think it would look really good with the headlights being that smoke look on them too. So that's another thing that I plan to address over the winter months when it is up. It may be hard to see on video, but the side of this intercooler expansion tank is stained. I can't explain it. It's almost like someone spilled coolant on it and it stained the powder coat, but it's not the same color tone here as it is here. And this cap ring is rusted out really bad. The cap comes off very hard, and I want to pull this intercooler expansion tank off, the radiator expansion tank off, and I want to get them both repowder coated. I think I want to do them in a black wrinkle powder coat. I think that will look pretty cool, because eventually when I get a supercharger, whether it be a Whipple or a VMP, they both kind of have that wrinkle look to them. They're not the satin type finish like this is. It's more of like a texture of this, where it has a textured appearance to it. So I think having these two expansion tanks done like that too would look really good. And I'm not too happy with this cover. It opens really hard. I'm sure that spring underneath the cap is all rusted too, so that's going to have to be probably sprayed with some WD-40. And I want to clean this up a lot. I want to sand it down and get it so it's polished and looks really good, because that's just an eyesore. I primarily want this to be a show car / street car, and that's not a very good street car look, having a cap or a show car look having a cap cover that looks like that. So I think that pretty much covers it. Overall, for its age, being 16 years old, 77,000 miles an hour, it just turned over recently. There's really not that much to complain about it. These are like little nitpick things. As far as how the car drives and handles, there's no complaints there. There's nothing mechanically wrong with it. The tune on this thing is amazing. It drives like stock. I mean, this car was basically stock when I got it, and then I did the pulley, the JLT intake, and the bigger mass air meter, so I know what it drove like stock. And I did have a tune, but the only thing it was tuned for was an aftermarket X pipe and whatever they adjusted on the tune itself, so it wasn't radically changed. And after the tune was done on this car, it handles, I mean, it drives really good parking lot manners, good low speed manners, all that stuff. So I think that covers everything. If I think of anything else, which I just did, of course, that's how it always goes when you do YouTube. One other thing that I forgot to mention, this has an aftermarket clutch cable in it, and it sucks. If you ever change a clutch cable on any Mustang or one of these, it doesn't matter, do not get an aftermarket cable. This is an aftermarket cable and it's complete shit. I hate it. The clutch pedal on this is so stiff, and if you ever replace a clutch cable, go with a Ford OEM one. This is the best one you can get. Don't get aftermarket, they're all trash. Well, maybe not, but I'm just saying that. But just go with Ford OEM. Same thing with throw bearings for the transmission. If you do the clutch and all that stuff, Ford throw bearing, Ford clutch cable, it's the best ones you can get. So because my clutch cable is so stiff, I think when I get the IRS situation figured out with getting the new bushings put in, sorry, a horn just landed on my arm, good timing, huh? When the IRS is out and the car is up in the air, it'd be a good time to get up underneath there, get the clutch all situated the way that it should be with the new cable. So I think that's when I'll probably do that. And all the things that I mentioned today are things that I plan on doing in the short term. These are things that you're probably going to see happen in 2021 when the car comes out of storage. And some of the stuff is going to happen during the winter months when it's in storage, like getting the brake calipers powder coated and rebuilt. I'm going to do that once the car is done for the year. So the videos are going to keep happening, and I'll do update videos on the calipers being rebuilt and powder coated and how they look when they go back on. So this is definitely going to be some more content once it's up for the winter. I pretty much have the month of October left, so that's about 4 weeks from now. I'm filming this right at the end of September, just a few more days, it is October, so not much time left. But that's enough for today, guys. I'll wrap this up. Thank you all very much for watching, those of you that do regularly. Anyone that's new, every watch, view, comment, like is all appreciated, so thank you very much, everyone. Until next time.